The king of cocaine, Pablo Escobar, is a good subject for a new series on Netflix. Stop here. What if I told you that the life of this young man, shown in the series, contained many loopholes and failed to pass the complete information about him? After Narco's 2015 release, fame and controversies followed. 4 years after Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria's passing in 1997, Netflix was founded. Since then, the company has experienced its fair share of fame, successes, and controversies. Escobar, on the other hand, occasionally attracted not only fame, but also controversy in a single act. Number 1. Narco's original plan. The whole life of the child Pablo, from his childhood till adulthood, and then becoming a master king of drugs, can't be described in just a single 3 hours movie. So, we have the rumors that Netflix decided to make a crime series on his life. A single film, however, wouldn't do it. They realized this after starting to gather information by conducting research on the king of cocaine. They discovered several stories about how his wealth came to be, beginning with the cockroach man and his previous life as a gravestone thief, before becoming a smuggler. All of this combined with the information from personal experiences brought to the table by DEA agents Steve Murphy and Javier Pina demonstrated to the producers that they knew nothing about Escobar. Narcos was born Bernardo Aparicio Garcia, who grew up in Escobar and other parts of Colombia, writes for Vox, and praises the show's thoroughness. Interestingly, he cited, among other things, the apt depiction of ethnic diversity, and smaller details such as miniature facades of colonial village houses hanging on the walls of Pablo's mother's home. Number 2. Escobar's recordings. Why the recordings delayed was because Pablo was a big name like other Hollywood stars, and he interrupted the recording. Not at all, guys. Pablo Escobar was a big believer in keeping records of events, which included videoing events and the land holdings as they happened. With this, they were able to create a fairly accurate model of Escobar's and the people around him's daily conversations, fashion, and activities. However, while in the film, Escobar is mainly sitting around brooding and staring into space, seriously considering how to make his next big move in his wars with the government, the truth is a little different, as Escobar contributed significantly to the show's production, as made evident by some of his recordings. The Medellín Cartel was a fan of the media. Number 3. Secrets of La Catedral. La Catedral was not an ordinary office, but was full of secrets. Another shocking thing in the series, Escobar's 5-star prison is represented in the show as being luxurious and finished with many of the drug king's possessions, but it doesn't reveal everything. However, the cathedral also contained additional Escobar-related material. In the film, Escobar gives a large book filled with images. However, in the book Manhunters, How We Stopped Pablo Escobar, agents Murphy and Pena write, "In his nearby office, we discovered a film canister in the trash. When the film was developed, Escobar's likeness that we discovered were transformed into wanted posters." Pena continues by saying that he had every single wanted poster and nearly every piece of writing ever published against him in Colombia. Surprisingly, the sex game was also strong near Pablo, like the letters of mothers offering their daughters for sextapanlo. Additionally, he saved unsettling notes from his opponents. But perhaps the most shocking discoveries were the letters from mothers offering their daughters to Pablo for sex. The lace, negligees, and several vibrators and sex toys are neatly arranged in a closet. Pena describes the bathroom of La Catedral as curiously sparkling with 3-inch walls. However, one fascinating element of their book is the discovery that Pena slept in Escobar's bed. He recalls tossing and turning all through the night in his bed because he couldn't fall asleep. Number 4. Family opinion. Films and dramas cannot replace the real person, and so we can see many biopics fail to justify the character and the story. The same happened with Pablo, and his family were also offended by the show, mostly his brother Roberto Escobar. In addition to providing information, Pablo's brother was upset with the show. If you've seen the show, you may be wondering where Pablo's brother was during the whole episode. You had to accept this, of course, and it is quite significant because you have to question how realistic the story was, how Pablo interacted with his family, and how the Escobars felt about it. Pablo Escobar's brother, Roberto Escobar, was also the cartel's accountant up to his capture after Pablo's death. As a result, trust me when I say that Roberto was not happy when the show showed another accountant named Blackbeard being imprisoned and then turning informant on the cartel to authorities. In response, he demanded $1 billion in compensation from the tech giant for using his and his brother's resemblance, without his or any other family member's consent. Interestingly, he also offered to check the second season for errors before it aired. Since this was only the first season though, we're not sure that plan went over well. Other family members have also disputed how Pablo was presented during the Palace of Justice siege, and how he died. But we'll get to that soon. Number 5. M19's true nature. Pablo a drug dealer or a murderer? Ivan L's death was also by the hands of Pablo. This is so scary to know. You must be surprised to know that one of the biggest guerrilla organizations in Colombia was M19. Left-wing nationalism, Bolivarianism, revolutionary socialism, and co-theory influenced by Marxist revolutionary Che Guevara were among their ideologies. M19 was portrayed in the program as easily fooled idealists who had no background in guerrilla warfare, as opposed to his portrayal as Ivan Torres in the television series. Ivan Marino Ospino, also known as Ivan the Terrible, was an experienced guerrilla leader before becoming the leader of M19. Ivan Marino Ospina had previously fought in Venezuela, been captured and subjected to torture to the point of nearly committing suicide before escaping 6 months later, while trying to pose as an army major. He was known as Ivan the Terrible because he always did this. Ivan's death at the hands of Pablo is regarded as unlikely, and some even imagine that he may not have given Escobar the fabled Bolivar sword at all. Number 6. Pablo's relationship with his family. Despite being a drug dealer, is this sure that such people cannot love his family? Guys, it makes sense that the interactions with Pablo were imaginative, given that the man's family was not contacted despite playing a significant role in the film, and that is a risky way to tell the story, especially if you already have assumptions. The bond between Pablo Escobar and Juan Pablo, now Sebastian Marroquin, has likely been misinterpreted more than any other. Sebastian, who is now free from the drug trade, frequently discusses his experiences growing up as the son of the largest drug dealer in interviews. He highlights how much his father loved him, while also pointing out the negative effects of his violent behavior. "Well, I learned so much about him," he once said. Moreover, Sebastian felt that he never felt pushed to use drugs, whether because of his education or because of the recollection of a family member who had experienced the adverse effects of drug usage. Sebastian's story of him and his mother appealing with Don Pablo to end his raids into Colombia, particularly after the bombing that left his sister Manuela permanently deaf in one ear, is a major part of the conversation. Naturally, the appeals were ignored, and Juan Pablo claims that this was also a characteristic of his father's terrible loser mentality. He gave examples of how he would cheat just to win, even against his children when they played games like Monopoly. Number 7. Pablo Escobar's gruesomeness. We are talking about the story of the king of drugs, so how can we move on without talking about power, violence, and terror? Narcoterrorism involves the use of violence to influence government policies against narcotic laws. Escobar's dealings with people seem to be a bit benign, never resulting in anything deadly. Other than that, Escobar is mostly shown as a troubled man with a romantic relationship with his wife and kids. According to first-hand accounts from informants, Don Pablo was a drug lord through and through. If he felt like it, Pablo would drill into his adversaries' kneecaps. His treatment of smugglers in the film is yet another unreported fact. Pablo used human mules and always paid them. But in reality, he also sewed cocaine into Miami-bound pets, and occasionally killed mules to save money. This is coming from the 7th richest man in the world at the time, who also served as a waiter at one of Pablo's parties, while Murphy and Peña were once agents informants. According to the informant, a different waiter was caught stealing silverware. Pablo decided to duct tape the person's hands and throw them out after being informed of this. Escobar was believed to have sent his enemies' fingers to their families. He also murdered every architect who worked on any of his hundreds of houses. The Italian architects were killed because Escobar did not want anyone to know the secrets of each property. Number 8. Carlos Lehder's influence. His father was a German who moved to Colombia, adopted the name Guillermo Lehder, and wed Helena Rivas, a native of that country. After his parents got divorced, Carlos moved to America, where his mother had ended up in prison. Moreover, after his parents got divorced, Carlo moved to America with his mother and ended up in prison. Escobar's rise to wealth was largely due to Lehder, who even made 2 offers to settle Colombia's foreign debt, one of which was his scheme to avoid surrender. However, unlike on The Sopranos, the characterization of his story and fall from grace was much less comprehensive than the show represented him as. Lehder's father, a Colombian immigrant, obtained German citizenship for him. He has never been to Germany, and won't be subject to legal action there because he already served his prison term there, according to German broadcaster DW. According to Lehder's lawyer, Oscar Oreyev, the German government helped him to move to Berlin because Lehder had no interest in returning to Colombia. His daughter claims that Lehder traveled from New York to Frankfurt on a routine passenger flight. My last interaction with him was 17 years ago. Despite his illness, I felt at ease and at peace, knowing that he is doing well. He was accompanied, according to Spiegel Online, by 2 U.S. officials. 80% of the cocaine smuggled into the U.S. in the 1970s and 1980s is thought to have come from the Medellín Cartel. Escobar, whose relationship with Lehder was represented in the popular Netflix series Narcos, was shot and killed by police in Medellín, Colombia, in 1993, as he tried to escape an arrest warrant to the U.S. Number 9. Escobar's suicide. Interestingly, Pablo had one final conversation with Juan Pablo Escobar before he passed away. The DEA, CIA, Center Spike, and law enforcement officials were keeping an eye on the newscasts to pinpoint the locations of cartel members, and Don Pablo was fully aware of this. Juan Pablo claims that his father advised him to shoot into the right ear rather than the mouth in order to avoid suffering torture and pass away quickly. Juan Pablo realizes that his father is giving himself up on the phone in an effort to prevent him from being interrogated. Pablo cut off the call and stated that something odd was occurring. His bodyguard Lyman is killed in the ongoing shooting, and Pablo is shot on the roof. Number 10. Wagner Mura's pro-drug stance. Pablo Escobar was represented by Mura Wagner in the television series Narcos. The Brazilian actor received praise for the part, and has become so closely associated with Escobar that a Google search for the drug lord's name returns images of him. Mura is an advocate for legalizing drugs like cocaine, and after experiencing life as Escobar, he takes that belief very seriously. To the Press Association, Mura stated, "The narcos craze and the drug trade are both huge issues. It's a significant issue for all of us, but particularly for Latinos. I believe it to be crucial. Working on Narcos taught me a lot about it, and it was crucial to my political development. For instance, I've always believed that drugs should be made illegal." Added the 40-year-old, "I believe that the drug policy, particularly in America, North America, and South America, is entirely inaccurate. It turned out to be a failure. I believe that treating addiction is extremely important, but it must be done so as a health issue rather than a law enforcement issue."